So during the lockdown, we saw a lot of, Zoom script readings and different ways for actors to try and get together to put on a show. But there was nothing quite like what we'll see in the documentary Grand Theft Hamlet.
This movie is so cool, and I'm so glad we caught up with it. I know we're a little bit late on it, but one of our good friends in our Patreon lunch date series that we do, Danny, said that he saw it and he loved it. So I thought, we should catch up with it. And I'd heard good things about it. It's streaming on Mubi.
Yes.
I don't know if it's been in theaters. Maybe it was and we're just late on it, but it's streaming.
I think we are. I think it was and we are.
But it's out there for you, so you should go check it out because it is truly original, truly one of a kind, and nothing else like it. So come subscribe to us because eventually we'll get to all the cool stuff in time. It's award season, guys. We're very busy.
Yes.
We find time for these things for you.
To be or not to be? That is the question.
You're welcome to audition if you want.
You're crazy, no? Okay, don't shoot us, please.
So as Alonso mentioned, this takes place entirely in Grand Theft Auto. These two guys, British actors, Sam Crane and Mark Oosterveen, were out-of-work actors. It is January 2021. It's yet another lockdown going on in Britain. And so they're playing Grand Theft Auto. And again, I have never played any version of Grand Theft Auto, but thankfully my 15-year-old son has, and he watched this with me. This is the online version of it where you can play against other people in the world. And so they're in this version of Los Angeles. And this is part of what I love about this movie is it's so cool to watch the GTA version of the city that we know so well. And so they end up at a place that is essentially the Hollywood Bowl.
Right.
But they call it the Vinewood
Bowl.
Vinewood Bowl.
And there's a big Vinewood sign on the side of the hill.
It's cute. Yeah, there's the Capitol Records building, and there's the U.S. Bank Tower downtown, and there's the Santa Monica Pier with the Ferris wheel and the roller coaster and all that. So they find this stage and start walking around it. And they're like, it'd be really cool to do some kind of production here. And in time, they just start tossing out lines from Hamlet, like the most famous thing ever in the history of theater. They start doing all the famous Hamlet lines. And it becomes this really cool thing where people approach them in the middle of it. And they're like, hey, we're doing Hamlet. Do you want to do Hamlet? And then they realize we could just put on all of Hamlet in Grand Theft Auto. They put out a call for auditions. This is the most fun audition montage ever. And they become really invested in it. And it becomes a sense of purpose for them. And it drives them and it taps into their need to be creative at a time where everyone's isolated. Here they are creating community, but you never lose sight of the inherent absurdity of the fact that they're trying to do it while people are shooting at them, and there's car crashes and exploding helicopters, and
they're dressed in the weird just skins of GTA, and
totally.
Moving around like this.
There's some guy in an alien outfit who just dances the whole time, and so I love the daring of this, and I also love just the heart of it because it reminds me of what things were like back then when all you wanted to do was connect with people. And maybe that means you FaceTime with friends you haven't talked to in years or decades. This was their way of connecting with other people. And so, yeah, it's silly and yeah, it's funny and it's inherently absurd, but there are stakes. And you get emotionally invested in whether they can pull this off. And if somebody has to pull out because they get a real job, what does that mean for the production? And increasingly you realize that this thing takes over their lives in ways that are both fulfilling and potentially detrimental to their IRL relationship. So I just loved this and I was with it the whole way through.
Yeah, I was shocked at how much it moved me because I was expecting it to just be this very sort of high concept, this crazy thing, and we put on a show. But it really does kind of become this sort of testament to our need for community, our need for creative expression. And then you get these moments where Mark talks about, he had to go to a funeral for his father's sister and she was his last living relative. And so without her, he's sort of completely on his own and adrift. And, Sam and his partner Pinny, who is making the two of them are making the documentary, and she sort of gets into the game to document it, hadn't really played it before. He's saying how you have each other and you have your kids and but this is it. This ridiculous production that we're putting together, this is all I have right now. And so I can't just walk away from it. And I have to, I need you to prioritize this to some extent because it's all I have. And then Pinny and Sam have a conversation later about like the amount of time he's spending in there working on this thing and putting it together, and how, you know, she's in another room with their kids and he's the only way she can even talk to him is to get in the game, you know. So yeah, it gets a lot deeper than you might think it would based on the very sort of high concept premise. So by the end of it, I did feel genuinely invested, and I'm fascinated about art that comes out of lockdown and that was created because of lockdown. It's a thing that always kind of bouncing in my head of like, one day that's a book. And so this is definitely, I think, a really interesting example of that.
Right. I was surprised at the filmmakers' willingness to make themselves so vulnerable this way, because Sam and Pinny, yeah, they're partners and they're in the game together, but, you know, they also made this film together. And so they chose what stays in and what comes out. And they chose to make this point in their marriage open to all of us, to strangers, you know, to all of the audience. And I'm fascinated by that choice. And I wonder what that is about. I love it. And I love the emotional truth of it, but it does make us connect with them more deeply than just like, haha, look how silly all of this is. So I really admire the courage of like putting this precarious point in your marriage out there for everyone to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of just sort of underscoring the idea that, like, you know, art requires a sacrifice, you know, and that sometimes you go on these like crazy, you know, not to say like a video game, but you go on these crazy missions in life and you have to sort of follow through and see them through. And sometimes that means it robs you your attention from other things. And so, yeah, I think the movie really works because they let us know that that was all happening behind the scenes, because I think it tells you so much about the devotion that he's putting into the Hamlet project, that she's putting into the film, but also their marriage and their family, you know, and trying to keep all that stuff afloat.
Also, it's a really cool way to rediscover Hamlet.
Yeah.
Which is something that we've read, we've all seen in a million ways. It's always cool to see when Shakespeare is depicted in a brash, bold new way, like whether it's like, you know, Baz Luhrmann doing the Romeo and Juliet balcony scene in a pool or whatever it is. And so I think that's fun. There's a cool sort of through line of Sam doing the to be or not to be speech in a variety of places within Grand Theft Auto, some of which are visually quite striking and unexpected.
The rainy parking lot, you know.
Right, that, or like there's like a boulder that he stands on in the middle of like lapping waves, and that adds like a whole other layer of drama. And so to rehear these words, it's funny, when you get back to Hamlet, you realize how many quotes, how many things we say all the time came from like, you know, the whole Polonius speech about neither borrow nor lender be.
Yeah. No, the first time I saw Hamlet in college on stage, I was like, oh, I thought that was from the Bible. Oh, I thought that was from, it's like when you watch Goodfellas and you realize how many movies have borrowed from it since then. Like, so much of the English language is reliant upon Hamlet.
The sound and fury signifying nothing. You know?
Exactly. I think it's also cool that the idea of they took this thing that exists, this Grand Theft Auto world, and then manipulated it to their own purposes and figured out, okay, if we go to this place and the blimp shows up and these other people are running interference to make sure no randos come up and shoot us, then we can do X, Y, Z. Like, you know, I think it's really cool when something is sort of mass marketed and then people are able to sort of grab it and fine tune it and make it very personal and very specific to what they want, even though it has nothing to do with what the original creators had in mind. The Grand Theft Auto you know, online people were not thinking about how can we make this easier for people to come stage a production of Hamlet. They were just trying to keep people playing the game, you know.
Yeah, and they make friends. They make genuine friends. Like, these are real connections, and it's sort of a nice idyllic notion, like idealistic idea of what the internet can do, what an online community can do when it's not completely toxic. And so this is sort of a nice idea. So, and then there is some real melancholy in some of the shots too, like some of like the last images we see in the film and what that means for their friendship, and just the blocking of those characters within the game says a lot about where they are in their lives by that point. So I thought that was quite poignant unexpectedly, you know.
Yeah. No,
What's your number?
This is really special. I like an 8.2. I was really enchanted by it.
Yeah, I will say like an 8.8. It helps a great deal to have a 15-year-old who understands these things. So when the real voice actress who is in Overwatch shows up, her name is Jen Cohn, Nick's like, oh, wow, that's Farrah from Overwatch. So if you know any of this stuff, it will definitely be a lot more meaningful for you. But even if you don't, I think you can appreciate like what a cool experiment it is.